Okay, I think we're good to go. I'm going to get rocking and rolling here. And talking today's training, finding and reaching federal buyers so that you can grow your company, right? Again, it's not about just finding and reaching federal buyers to put in a contact list or a CRM and say, hey, we got them, but you want to grow your company. And that's how I think about these type of topics when I teach them. What's the end goal? What are you really trying to think about? And, some of the challenges I see people run into is that they can't win contracts if they don't have agency level relationships. Many of us experts out here who teach government contracting, we really do come down to saying you need to know people. Somebody said yesterday, and I thought it was an interesting comment, and I don't know if I got a chance to reply to them yet, but they had said it really is about who you know more than what you know. And I would have said something along the lines of, well, no, it doesn't matter who you know. If you don't know anything, then it doesn't matter who you know, right? You could know the key decision maker, and they're like, yeah, you're a super nice guy, get out of here. All right, let's have a barbecue or a beer. But it's about what you know. And the challenge we have is you are an expert at what you do, and we need to increase the amount of people who know you, right? So who you know is important, but it's also really important that you have a core competency that you can drive home to address an agency's mission. And so if you don't have these relationships, then you're not going to hear about opportunities. We call it shifting left. You're not going to hear about them early enough so that you can be competitive on those opportunities. And that's what you want to be. In order to be competitive, you need to hear about opportunities before they're in the SAM, in the RFP phase or even the RFI phase, if you can get hearing about them earlier. And so what I want to talk to you about today in this training is how, when you think about finding and reaching federal buyers, the solution to me is to focus on one program office at a time. I'm going to give you 3 points I'm going to cover today, but keep this in mind. When you're trying to find and build relationships, find and reach these federal buyers, the more you can focus, niche down, right? We say niche down on your core competencies, but also niche down on your outreach efforts. When we teach this in our workshop, we always sit there and say, focus on a program office and dive deep in there. When you've got that saturated, you can begin to expand. But if you try to find and reach buyers in the Army, Navy, and Air Force, you're not going to do a good job at it, and you're certainly not going to be building relationships. And so the effort, even if you have contacts that you find and even have first meetings with, you'll notice that your relationships are not as tight as you want them to be. But if you're able to focus on a program office, you're going to have those strong relationships. And so today I'm going to cover 3 main points. I'm going to cover the top ways that you can find federal buyers. These are just consistent ways to find buyers in the federal market. The second thing I want to cover is how you can use subcontracting to get inside the wire to find those buyers. And that's one of my all-time favorite. And the last one that I'll cover is being a SME, or being the SME that your buyer needs. When you're the SME, the subject matter expert that the buyer needs, they'll find you, right? And so we'll talk about that. If this is what you want to hear about today, if you're following with what I'm saying, that you can't win contracts without relationships, and in order to get relationships, you need to find and meet these federal buyers, do me a favor, put win contracts into the chat. Let me know you're following along with me and you're here for the ride. Occasionally, it also gives me a chance to get water as you do that. But I'm doing all right now. So let's move on to the first point that I want to cover today, top ways to find federal buyers. Most of these you should be very familiar with. So I'm restating it, but I want to remind you about it. And then at the end of this, I want to give you an action item for you to take away, starting today, something you can start doing. So the first place that I love looking for buyers, and this is really interesting since it actually doesn't have buyers, but we'll talk about that, is USA Spending, right? USA Spending is this beautiful site that is a display. So it kind of reports on the data that's in FPDS and the data that might be in other places. It pulls it back in. But the reason I like it is it's very easy to navigate. And so I can use it a lot easier than some other tools to find the opportunities that I wish I had won. And when I find those opportunities, then I can reverse engineer that, go look at other tools, which I'll talk about in a minute, to find out who the buyer is. But sometimes in order to find the federal buyers that I want to reach, I need to find the opportunities that I wish I could win. An example is when I was preparing this training for today, and I was doing a quick walkthrough on these different tools in USA Spending. I said, okay, what if I do this? And I typed in SharePoint. It came up with a bunch of opportunities, and I filtered it out. And I said, well, show me opportunities that were won in the last 2 fiscal years, so 2022 and 2023. And when I pulled it up, the first one that came up, which is a great one, was a $100 million opportunity that was awarded to Dell Technologies, right? Dell Federal Technologies or something. And the reason I like that, I'm like, wow, SharePoint, $100 million contract. If I could just get a piece of that, right? We all want to be part of something big if we can't be all of something small. And so when I looked at that and I said, SharePoint, let me go look at it. One of the things that I noticed right away was that opportunity was basically for 92,000 licenses of Microsoft's product. And the reason I like that opportunity for finding federal buyers is because I said, well, anybody buying 92,000 licenses of this must know the contracting officers who are also buying services related to those Microsoft products, which relate to my core competency. So go into USA Spending, explore in there of finding opportunities, slam dunk opportunities that you wish you won. And then you can reverse engineer that through other tools like number 2 here, the FPDS, the Federal Procurement Data System. This tool is awesome, right? It has almost every contract that was awarded in the federal space. Some it doesn't have, but who cares about that? It has a ton in there, more than enough for you to be able to find federal buyers. And so if you go into FPDS, and by the way, I'm not here to teach you how to use FPDS today. FPDS itself has its own training and its own user guide. You can go to PTAX, they'll teach you. So there's all sorts of people that teach you how to use that tool. But if you don't know how to use the Federal Procurement Data System the same way you can use Facebook or your email system, then I believe you're missing out on the fact that this is a mandatory tool for your job. And you should take the time, take 16 hours and go learn how to become an expert at FPDS. Because when you do, you'll find things like that very fast. And so anyways, in FPDS, if you do a search on whatever you want to search on, NAICS codes, agencies, a keyword like SharePoint, like I did a minute ago, opportunities will come up. And all I want to point out here is that when you click on an opportunity to view it, in the top right-hand corner, you'll generally find the name and email address for a contracting officer, which is perfect, right? And so I'm going to stop there. FPDS, top right-hand side, there's federal buyers. So if you're trying to find buyers, there's one way. Let's go to number 3. Number 3 is SAM, right? So the System for Awards Management. And because it's just fun to say SAM's full name out loud. If you go into SAM, similar to FPDS, you'll find points of contact in there, and they're almost always the contracting officer or the contracting specialist. So if you go into SAM, all the way towards the bottom of an opportunity that you like, you can find the points of contact. So you can search on anything that you want. Again, coming back to SharePoint or NAICS codes or agency. And when you go in and view an individual opportunity, no matter what notice type it is, you'll find it generally at the bottom. If it's a solicitation, it has documentation. If you click on the documentation, it often will have points of contact in there, and they're generally duplicated with the basic data on SAM. But if you're looking for federal buyers, go into SAM. Either look for new opportunities to find those buyers, or like my favorite, find the people, the contracting officers who have awarded contracts that I wish I had won. That should have been mine. If I find them, then I can begin to go in and just introduce myself and hopefully track them for future opportunities. Maybe they'll be nice enough to say, you know what, this other company won it. I can make an introduction. You know, if you're lucky, you can get that. So that's SAM. The next way is forecast. And I'm going to move through these pretty fast because I got 2 other slides that are really important to me. And no, you can't have a copy of the slides for whoever's going to ask, because these are really just notes to keep me going, and they're not, necessarily presentation quality. But forecast is this next one, right? Go into forecast. I was just doing, I have a customer in our workshop, and they're going to DHS. They want to track on opportunities that are in DHS. DHS has a fantastic forecast tool, not just a spreadsheet. They have a great tool, which ironically I then export to Excel. But in that forecast, they have hundreds and hundreds of opportunities for, over the next 6 months that you can track on and find. But anyways, inside there, they have points of contact. So you can click on that, follow through, and identify these potential buyers. Sometimes these points of contact actually are the program office buyers, which is great too if you want to get in there and start talking about it. But there was a opportunity in there. It's an 8A Stars 3, they're thinking about, should it go on, I think it was like Alliance or Oasis or 8A Stars 3, and it's a $100 million opportunity. And that was a really attractive thing to me and my team, because we want to go in and try to push that to 8A Stars 3. Well, now we know who to talk to. Now we found the federal buyer because we went into forecast. Most agency forecasts, somewhere along the row of data, will have a point of contact, name, number, and email. So that's another way to find buyers. Industry days. If you attend an actual industry day for a big event, like I attended a State Department industry day for a big IT vehicle that they have coming out, and they listed out, I think it was like 7 or 9 contracting staff who are responsible for this huge contract. So I've got a bunch of people's names, numbers, and emails from that. And I'm also able to look at some of the data they share about, hey, here's the program offices who will buy in. But industry days, typically the point of an industry day is to share with industry and to begin to have conversations with industry, so the government doesn't get to a stage where they put an RFP out and it goes bad, or they, or worse, award a contract that then gets protested. And so these industry days are designed to try to avoid a lot of that risk by having the conversations early on. Industry day, agency briefing decks. And so sometimes people like Dave Walsh, who I just saw pop up on the chat from the Navy, sometimes they do an industry day once a year, a couple times a year. They'll go out and brief. And in their slides, they might have points of contact. I know Nav Air in particular often puts their buyers in there, program office people, contracting office people, and it's an awesome way to get it. So finding agency briefing decks. If you want to know what I'm talking about, an easy way to see a whole bunch of these agency briefing decks is go join the Navy and DIB LinkedIn group that I created. The only purpose of the group is for me to take Navy data and put it in there to share it out to anybody who wants it. So you don't have to look all over the internet. You find it in one place for many commands in the Navy. Next one's LinkedIn. You can find people on LinkedIn. Obviously, you can go search for small business specialist, contracting officer, contracting specialist, program officers. Many of these people are on LinkedIn, and I would make up a fact on the spot here and say 40% of them are active, right? I just said Dave Walsh, who's coming in. He's on LinkedIn. He uses LinkedIn as a tool that's out there. Many other Navy people do. And so not all Navy, but you'll find people on there. It's just another option. So that was 7. And the last one, 8, is the procurement center representatives. If you're struggling to find buyers and getting into agencies, build a relationship. Don't just go and ask, right? Build a relationship with the procurement center representative, PCR. This is an SBA employee whose job is basically to do oversight of the spending agencies do to make sure things that should go small aren't going large. That's in a very quick nutshell. That's what they do. But the point is that they know buyers. They work with contracting officers at specific agencies they're responsible for. If you go download the small business specialist directory that we have on our website, you can find that at the www.govconchamber.com. When you go there and download it, inside there, we also put PCRs, I think, and so you can quickly find them. So, okay, that's a lot of different information, 8 different ways that you can find buyers, right? Let me just rattle them really quick. USA Spending, FPDS, SAM, Forecast, Industry Days, agency briefing decks, LinkedIn, and PCRs, right? And so what I want you to do is to commit to finding 5 new buyers a day. It should take you like 15 minutes or less to go into one of these tools and find 5 buyers that are in your world. These buyers might not even talk to you, but the exercise is not about getting them to talk to you. It's just finding 5 names. And if you're lucky, emails and phone numbers. But if you start doing this, you'll start building a list of buyers. And so if you're willing to commit to 5 a day, right? If you're willing to move yourself forward and you think that's a good idea, just put 5 a day into the chat so that both I get that you are following me and you're committing to finding 5 new people a day, and I also can drink water. Okay, so got a lot of stuff. We're moving on to the second topic. I love how one bullet of my 3 main bullets take up most of my time, but it's going to be the same thing here. The second thing I want to point out is that you want to subcontract to get inside the wire, right? I talk about finding buyers in FPDS, right? And that's being outside. That's like walking in the neighborhood and you're looking at the houses wondering where the buyers are and how do you find them. But imagine if you go inside of a house, right? The buyers are in that house, you know they're in that house. Well, now your job gets so much easier. And so this is a tactical tip for you about go get on a subcontract at the agency that you're trying to get in, and you'll be inside the wire. And what I mean by inside the wire is installations like military installations have wire literally around their base. And if you go to a building, that building, that door, that security guard is basically the wire. You're not getting inside that fence. But if you're inside the wire, it's so much easier. That's why it's great to be an incumbent. And so subcontract on existing contracts. You can do it on new contracts as well, but it's way faster on new ones. By the way, I have an upcoming training this week or next about I think I said like how to make the no proposal way to make $1 million. And so that basically is around subcontracting. So go take a look at that and it'll tell you kind of how to get on some teams. I'm not going to talk about that today. I want to talk about why though subcontracting to get inside the wire to find buyers is so important. One of the reasons it's important, no particular order of my bullets here, but you have implied trust, right? They start to see you almost as a coworker, not as a salesperson. And you're able to build this relationship. If I call into Sally and I'm calling from the outside, hey, this is Neil from ABC Company, her radar's up. What are you selling? I don't have time. I get these calls from small businesses all the time. But if I'm in there working and I see Sally at the coffee pot every day, I begin to be seen as a coworker. We both park together. We both walk through the rain to get to the office. We're coming in. And so there's this level of implied trust is what I call it. You can think about being inside the wire allows you to go from 6 degrees of separation to 2 degrees of separation. There's this old game we used to play called 6 Degrees of Separation from Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon's an actor. How many people do you have to go through to get to Kevin Bacon? And pretty much everybody can get to Kevin Bacon in 6 degrees, or Kevin Bacon get to everybody in 6 degrees. And this idea, for example, you're 2 degrees away from, let's say, the White House. Because I've had contracts in the White House. I do work with the White House. If you know me and I know them, you're 2 degrees away. Well, if you go inside the wire and you're subcontracting, now if you want to reach Sally and you're working with John goes, oh yeah, I work with Sally. I talk with Sally all the time. We're friends. Let's go talk. You're 2 degrees of separation. So what you're doing when you're inside the wire is removing all these steps you have to go through to try to find that right person. And then another thing is buy from people buy from those they know, like, and trust, right? You may have heard this line before. And it's way easier to get somebody to know, like, and trust if you're standing there having coffee, if you're building a relationship, if they just see you doing great work and they're happy to talk to you about something else, right? It's not in any kind of sneaky way ever. It's just basically being an incumbent. And if you're not the incumbent, the prime on a contract, the best way to be an incumbent is to get on a subcontract. Okay, so then just some other quick tips on this, right? If you're in there, you're having the chance for daily coffees and lunches, you have this ability to build relationships. Shoot, sometimes I was getting invited to 4th of July parties and things like, come on over to the house. Okay. That type of relationship begins to happen when you're more coworkers, which is what happens a little bit when you're inside the wire. You have the ability to ask questions so much quicker, right? Ask questions to find buyers or even ask questions of the buyer. If you start having access, it's not that hard. I was in an Air Force contract where once a week I would sit down with 50 other people and we'd have this kind of all hands meeting, but we would all start to get to know each other. We'd become these familiar faces. So it's easy to walk over and say, hey, Jane, can I have a conversation? And the last one is, and I've been kind of alluding to this, is introductions is so much easier. When you're in the wire, it's so much easier for John to introduce you to Jane or vice versa. So if you understand what I'm talking about, this idea of subcontracting to get inside the wire to find and meet buyers, then do me a favor, just put be on the inside in the chat. Let me know you're tracking. Be on the inside. And I got 7 minutes and 5 hours worth of content to give you. Let's get rocking and rolling. No water. Okay, so my last tip for you is along this lines of how do you find and meet buyers, right? Be the SME that the buyers need. Be the subject matter expert that buyers need. One of the easiest ways to find a buyer is if they knock on your door, right? One of the easiest ways to find a buyer is if they come knocking on your door. In fact, if you want buyers to knock on your door, do me a favor and throw knock into the chat and just make life fun for me. This idea that you want the buyers to come to you, right? What would make a buyer come to you? Think about that. And when you're thinking about who you're trying to get to come knocking on your door, it's not the contracting officer that I want, and it's not the small business specialist. No offense to the professionals. It's the program office in this case that I'm talking about. If you're a subject matter expert, the ones with the need, the program office, are the ones who are going to come knocking on your door when you're the SME that they need, the subject matter expert that they need. And so I'm going to talk to you about a couple of quick tips in here, but the reason they like you and will interact with you and begin to know and trust you is because you're helping them with requirements development. Think about if you're in construction and your expertise is elevators and you create some piece of content, a video, a white paper, whatever, and you're sharing it and you're telling the federal buyer, hey, these are the 3 different ways you can break an elevator when it falls accidentally or something, right? And there's these 3 different ways. Here's why this one is the best. But actually, if you only are having an elevator for 4 floors, this is the one you want. This is the braking system you want because it's best for this. When you start providing that kind of information to somebody who's shaping the requirements of what they need, and they're doing their own market research, they're doing just what you do, which is going to Google and going out there. When you're getting this stuff in front of them, they start seeing you as that subject matter expert they can trust and understand more about their requirements through what you're writing. So some examples of what you can do. I just mentioned the 3 braking systems. You might also do product comparison. Maybe I sit there and say, hey, are you wondering whether you should be on the cloud? Well, here's Google, here's Amazon, and here's Microsoft Azure, right? 3 different cloud providers. Here's the comparison, pluses and minuses, pros and cons. You do something like that, and now that buyer can find it really helpful in their decision-making process for which ones to use. Vendor marketing material. I really love this, where you can go to those 3 companies, let's say Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, go to those 3 different companies, and they're putting out material about, hey, top 10 migration tips for the cloud. Well, you can reshare that to your federal buyers, get that out to them somehow, still giving full credit to the original source of it, Amazon, let's say, but now your buyers are seeing you as the one who are bringing it forward. Maybe you actually get 10 tips from Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, and share all of them forward. And so that kind of information becomes really helpful to the buyers, and they see you as that subject matter expert. I already talked about some of the credibility that you can get, right? When you're sharing things like Microsoft or Amazon, you almost get a little bit of borrowed credibility on that material you share. So the types of things you should be thinking about related to content that you're creating is similar to what I do, right? Podcast, YouTube. One of my favorite comments, compliments and comments I got back from somebody recently was that, and they said, hey, this might be TMI, Neil, but you've reached this stage where I'm taking you to my shower, Neil. And I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about, because I take my phone and my YouTube to the shower, or I'm maximizing my time wherever I'm at, folding laundry. It's like, hey, it's you and me in the laundry kind of thing. And you could be that same expert, subject matter expert for your buyers, getting to the stage of them folding laundry or having coffee and listening to you and watching you, reading your material. And so you want to consider that. Webinars you can do, white papers, blogs you can write, and all of this stuff, there's a lot of training that goes around it. And you don't have to think of a lot about it. Just pick one and do like one a month. If you do one a month, and then you work with a small business specialist who's at your target agency, and maybe you say, hey, I'd like to get this in front of the IT directors. This is who I built it for. Could you help me move that along? And so instead of trying to get a meeting with that program office, instead of asking a lot from the small business specialist, if you're telling the small business specialist, hey, I got something I think your program office would value, not just value meeting me, but value this information, this product comparison or whatever, then they're going to be happy to share it if they see that value the same as you. So, and then the last thing is make sure your marketing material, you have 6 assets, right? 6 marketing assets I talk about, look at different training, but make sure those 6 marketing assets highlight your subject matter expertise, because if you pass, let's say, a white paper along to a program office, they're going to come out and start looking at you a little more. You want to make sure that if you're passing along cybersecurity tips, that your capability statement, your website, your LinkedIn profile kind of scream that you do cybersecurity. So if you understand this value of being the SME your buyers need, put into the chat, be the SME. Be the SME, SME. Okay, 3 things we talked about today, and then I want to give you a reminder tip here. The 3 things I talked about for finding and meeting federal buyers are the 8 top ways that I gave you to find federal buyers. The second thing was subcontract, to get inside the wire. And then the third one was be the SME that buyers need. And here's my tip for you. Commit to finding 5 new buyers a day, right? Just hold yourself accountable. No one else is there. And in fact, if 5 is too much, go down to 2 a day. Whatever you do, commit to finding these buyers every single day. 5 a day is a great number. It takes 15 minutes or less. But when you do that, you will start building up this list of 100 and 200 potential buyers that might be a fit for what you sell. So commit to yourself to doing that today. If you want to work with me or my team, we have a BD Accelerator workshop. Love to have you in it. If your company's at the right stage, we'd love to have you come on and ask us about it. So to learn more about that, just shoot me a message in LinkedIn. remember, government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.